When a nation collapses under debt, the story always sounds the same. Governments fail. Currencies crumble. Savings evaporate. Jobs disappear. The middle class shrinks into survival mode. History books frame these moments as tragedies, and they are. But here's the uncomfortable mystery no one likes to confront. If debt collapses, destroy entire countries. Why do the same groups always emerge richer, stronger, and more powerful afterward? Because debt collapses don't erase wealth, they redistribute it, and they don't happen randomly. Follow patterns, predictable, repeatable, and quietly profitable for those positioned on the right side of the system. To understand who really wins when nations drown in debt, we need to trace how debt becomes power, how crises are engineered by incentives rather than villains, and why collapse often marks the beginning, not the end, of someone else's empire. Stay with me, because the winners are rarely the ones on the battlefield or in the headlines. They're the ones holding the contracts. Setting the stage, debt as a tool, not a problem. Debt wasn't always dangerous.
Ow.
In its earliest form, debt was simple. A farmer borrowed seeds. A merchant borrowed capital. A ruler borrowed to survive a crisis. Debt had limits because repayment depended on reality. But as nations grew, something changed. Empires discovered that debt could do what armies couldn't: extract resources without invasion, influence policy without occupation control. Futures without direct rule. Debt stopped being a bridge and became a lever. The twist is this: most debt crises don't start with recklessness. They start with trust. Origins: how debt became permanent. For most of history, governments aimed to repay debt. Default was shameful. Inflation was dangerous. Overspending triggered rebellion. But modern financial systems changed the rules. With the rise of central banking and sovereign bonds, governments gained the ability to roll over debt indefinitely, borrow from the future, separate political promises from economic limits. Debt became permanent. This was sold as progress. After all, if growth continues, debt becomes manageable, at least in theory. The first illusion was born. Debt doesn't matter as long as the system keeps expanding. But expansion has limits. When those limits appear, the game changes. The rise of global debt and invisible chains. By the 20th century, debt had become global. International lenders, institutions, and bond markets replaced kings and conquerors. Instead of armies, they used credit ratings, interest rates, conditional loans. Stability programs: the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, private investment funds. These institutions weren't villains, but they weren't neutral either. Lent with conditions. Privatization, austerity, currency reforms, policy alignment at first. Borrowing nations welcomed the money. Debt delayed hard choices. Debt preserved political power. Debt bought time. But time borrowed eventually comes due. Cause and effect: why debt always outruns growth. Here's the mechanical problem at the heart of national debt. Debt grows exponentially. Economies grow linearly. Interest compounds faster than productivity, so governments do what seems logical: borrow more to pay old debt, inflate currency to reduce real burdens, cut services to maintain solvency. Each solution creates a new problem. Debt doesn't just accumulate, it locks in dependency, and dependency has winners. The breaking point: when the illusion shatters, every debt crisis hits the same wall. Confidence breaks. Investors demand higher yields. Currencies weaken. Capital flees. At this moment, nations face impossible choices. Default, hyperinflate, accept external control. This is where the real winners begin to emerge. Because collapse doesn't destroy value equally, it transfers it. The fallout: who actually loses when nations collapse under debt. The losses are painfully predictable. Wage earners, pensioners, small business owners, savers, public workers. Their assets are local. Their incomes are fixed. Their mobility is limited. Inflation wipes out savings. Austerity cuts services. Currency devaluation raises living costs. This isn't accidental, it's structural. So those tied to the domestic economy pay first. So who wins? The quiet beneficiaries. Let's answer the question directly. 1. Creditors and bondholders. Debt collapses don't erase obligations, they restructure them. Creditors often receive asset swaps, long-term control, political leverage, priority repayment. Even haircuts frequently preserve influence. Debt transforms into ownership. 2. Asset buyers. With foreign currency. As currencies collapse, assets become cheap for outsiders. Land infrastructure, utilities, natural resources. What looks like recovery is often fire sale privatization. Local populations lose control. Foreign capital gains, permanence. 3. Financial institutions and intermediaries. Crises create complexity, and complexity rewards. Banks, law firms, consultants, funds specializing in distressed debt, they don't need stability. They need volatility. 4. Political elites who survive the reset. Not all leaders fall. Some rebrand, some align with creditors, some emerge as reformers. Debt crises eliminate opposition as easily as budgets. 5. Systems of control. Perhaps the biggest winner isn't a group, but a system. Each collapse justifies surveillance, centralization. Reduced sovereignty, external oversight, control expands in the name of rescue. Failed fixes. Why recovery never restores the past after collapse. Recovery plans arrive. They promise stability, growth, reform opportunity, but they rarely restore what was lost. Why? Because debt crises don't reset systems. They reconfigure ownership. Growth returns. GDP improves. Markets celebrate. But control has shifted. The nation recovers. The population doesn't. Modern parallels. The pattern is already here. Look at the world today. Global debt has reached historic levels. Public debt, private debt, corporate debt, household debt. Every sector is leveraged. Every major economy relies on low interest rates, constant refinancing, central bank intervention. This isn't stability. It's postponement. And postponement always favors those closest to the levers. The shocking reality: debt collapses are often described as failures of governance. But history suggests something more disturbing. They are mechanisms of consolidation. Crisis concentrates assets, reduces public control, expands financial influence, normalizes inequality. Collapse doesn't end systems, it completes them. The repeating cycle. Every debt collapse follows the same arc. Easy credit, political comfort, structural dependency, confidence loss, crisis, asset transfer, recovery, repeat. The winners prepare early. The losers are told to endure. 3 clear takeaways. 1. Debt is power. When you're the creditor, the borrower risks collapse. The lender gains leverage. 2. Crises redistribute more than they destroy. Wealth doesn't vanish. It changes hands. 3. Recovery often means control, not freedom. Stability comes at the price of sovereignty. Final warning, an open question. Every nation believes it is different, smarter, stronger, too big to fail. History has never agreed. The question isn't whether debt will reshape the future. The question is who is positioned to win when it does, and who will be told the collapse was unavoidable. Call to action: if this video challenged how you see debt and collapse, share it. Subscribe for deep, serious explorations of power, money, and history. And comment below: when the next debt crisis arrives, will it be called a failure or a transfer? Because once you know who benefits, you start to see collapse very differently.